How's it going, everyone? Electro Pikachu here, and we recently reached 2,000 subscribers. It's an incredible milestone, and thank you all so much for the support you've given me up to this point. To celebrate, I've decided to do a what if that I got suggested a few times, and have actually stated in the past that I was interested in doing. So today, we're going to be tackling what if Ash went to Hisui. I know it might be a bit far-fetched of an idea, but there's a pretty easy way to make it work. So, let's begin. We begin as Ash and Pikachu lay in bed. After having gone on another adventure with Brock and Misty, the duo had returned home to Pallet Town. There, they had been spending some time with Ash's mother, as well as helping Professor Oak and Tracy at the lab. However, there's still something on Ash's mind. He thinks about a question Gary had asked him, about whether he had gotten any closer to reaching his goal of Pokemon Master. This question stays in Ash's mind as he drifts off to sleep. Suddenly, Ash feels a bright light shining on him. He tries to ignore it, not wanting to wake up so soon. However, the light continues to bother him, so he opens his eyes. That's when he finds himself and Pikachu floating in a state of nothingness. Confused and a little worried, Ash grabs Pikachu, allowing the yellow mouse to crawl up onto his shoulder. The two look around, but there's nothing except empty void as far as the eye can see. That is, apart from the light that was shining in Ash's eyes. He looks over to it again. The light begins to grow larger and larger, and then a voice begins to come from it. The voice states that this is its domain, and that it is which the humans call Arceus. Ash remembers meeting Arceus a few times before. Arceus tells Ash that he will be going to a world that will be strange, yet familiar to him. Ash asks what all this means, and the Alpha Pokemon simply states that in time he will understand. Suddenly, Ash's Rotom phone flies out, except the Rotom isn't there anymore. In a flash of light, the phone is enveloped. Soon, the light stretches out from there, enveloping both Ash and Pikachu as well. And then it fades to black. Ash begins to hear a familiar sound. The cooing of a Rowlet. The cries of a Cyndaquil and Oshawott, respectively. Then someone asks if he's alright. Ash opens his eyes to find himself on a beach, where the three Pokemon he heard, as well as a man in a purple hat, are standing around him. The man helps Ash to his feet, asking him if he's alright. He nods, thanking the man. The man sighs with relief before he says that he got quite the scare, seeing him fall out of the sky like that. Ignoring the strange connotations, Ash asks where he is, to which the man explains that this is Prelude Beach. And he queries Ash on whether the fall had messed with his memory. He also points out that his clothes seem very unusual. The man notices Pikachu climb up onto Ash's shoulder once again. He stares wide-eyed, stating that he's never seen a Pokemon this friendly with a human. Ash is confused by this, saying that people and Pokemon almost always get along. The man chuckles at this, stating that he's not sure where he comes from, but he's been around the world and has never seen that. Of course, the three with him seem to like him alright. It's at that moment that the man realizes that the three Pokemon aren't there anymore. He begins to panic a little bit, saying that he has to go find them. Ash offers to help, and the man thanks him, before introducing himself as Professor Laventon. Ash says that he's Ash Ketchum of Pallet Town in the Kanto region. However, Laventon is more confused by this, saying he's visited Kanto and has never heard of a Pallet Town. However, there's no time to question that now, as they need to get started on finding the 3 starters. They first manage to get to Rowlet, who is sleeping peacefully beneath a tree, which reminds Ash of his own Rowlet. At first, the professor tries walking up to Rowlet. However, upon snapping a twig, Rowlet wakes up and flies up into the tree's branches. Professor Laventon pulls out a strange, very old-looking Pokeball. At first, he gets ready to throw the Pokeball, but then he looks at Ash. Seeing Pikachu by his side, he says that catching Rowlet may be easier for him. At the notion of catching, Ash says that it would be nice if Goh was still with him. Goh had a knack for catching Pokemon after all. Still, he could give it a shot. Taking the Pokeball, and with a throw that could make a baseball pitcher proud, Ash hurls the Pokeball at Rowlet. Unfortunately, while he hits the bird Pokemon dead on, the Pokeball doesn't capture Rowlet, causing the bird to get agitated. Ash wonders why it didn't work, to which Laventon looks at the ball, and finds that he didn't undo the latch. With a simple flick, the latch is undone, and Ash comments that he'll have to get used to that. As Rowlet prepares a leafage, he tosses the Pokeball up and calls for Pikachu to hit it. Pikachu smacks the ball with its tail, and the extra force allows Ash to capture the Rowlet this time. Professor Laventon is very surprised by the team displayed, once again saying that he's never seen anything like it. Ash chuckles, taking the compliment, saying that he and Pikachu have been on a lot of adventures together. So the two of them get along pretty well. The next they manage to find is Cyndaquil, who's hiding behind a rock. The two attempt to sneak up on it, but unfortunately the skittish Cyndaquil does still manage to notice them, letting off an ember in their direction. This causes the two to have to dive out of the way of the attack. Knowing that they can't simply sneak up on Cyndaquil, Ash instead has Pikachu talk to the Fire Mouse. Pikachu reassures Cyndaquil that it won't be harmed in any way, and that they are friends. Ash then comes up in a very non-threatening manner, before crouching down in front of Cyndaquil. He proceeds to stroke the area on Cyndaquil's back where its flames normally ignite from. This calms Cyndaquil down, and allows Ash to capture it. Professor Laventon asks how Ash knew that would work, to which he shrugs, saying that his own Quilava liked it back home, getting the spots where its flames ignited petted. So, he thought it might soothe Cyndaquil as well. This throws Laventon for a loop, as he wasn't expecting this mystery child to have more than one Pokemon. Before they find Oshawott, Ash notices something in the grass. It gives off a faint glow, but it's just enough for him to see it. When he picks it up, he discovers a phone of some kind. Though it's a strange one, it has many details that resemble Arceus. Then Ash remembers his phone from before he arrived here. Is there a connection? The phone lets out a beep, and a message appears. Seek out the Renegade. Renegade? What was that about? Confused, Ash puts away the phone. He then returns to Professor Laventon to continue their quest. They finally reach Oshawott, who's polishing its Scalchop in a small pond. When it notices Ash and Laventon, rather than running away, it turns to face Ash, beckoning him forward. Laventon is a little confused, but Ash knows what this means. He asks Oshawott if it's sure it wants to have a battle, to which the Sea Otter Pokemon nods with a prideful grin. Ash smiles, reaching back and getting ready to call out Surf-Etched. But he doesn't feel the Pokeball there. In fact, he doesn't feel any of his Pokeballs on his person. It then hits him. He left all of his Pokemon back at Professor Oak's lab. Still, at least he had Pikachu by his side. So, he chooses Pikachu to battle Oshawott. Despite the clear difference in experience, Oshawott does prove itself to be an impressive opponent. Using Tackle and Aqua Jet to battle, Oshawott does its best to face Ash. However, Ash has seen similar moves to this before, and so Oshawott is defeated with an Electro Web. Ash then throws a Pokeball at Oshawott. However, the Sea Otter breaks free of it. Oshawott is clearly winded, but has a look of sheer determination on its face. It stares at Ash and Pikachu, but just before it can attack, Oshawott collapses again. Rather than throwing another Pokeball, Ash chooses to pick up Oshawott, carrying the water type in his arms. Ash then asks if there's anywhere they could take Oshawott for medical care. Somewhat shocked, Laventon suggests they head back to his home, Jubilife Village. Jubilife Village. The name sounds familiar to Ash. He asks if the village has anything to do with a Jubilife city in the Sinnoh region. Laventon raises an eyebrow, asking what region is named after the beloved creators of the world they live in. As Laventon walks off, Ash takes a pause for a moment. Why did Laventon say that Sinnoh was the name for the beloved creators of the world? There was also no Jubilife City, let alone Sinnoh region, supposedly. Of course, originally he didn't know they existed, but surely a professor would know about the different regions of the world, right? Ash continues to join Laventon, and the two make it to a wooden barricade. Someone in a nearby tower sees the two of them, and demands to know who they are. Laventon states his name, before introducing Ash, saying he's an outsider who helped him earlier. The man tells Laventon to show proof of who he is, to which Laventon says to send Benny over, because he'd know it was the real him. He also states that while he's at it, he could tell Benny to bring over a bowl of his delicious potato mochi. The man then opens the gates for the two, although he does announce his skepticism at the Pikachu on Ash's shoulder. The two walk across the dirt road, and make it to a large building on the other side of the village. Inside, Ash sees a few people walking around, doing all sorts of different tasks. A few here and there look strangely familiar, but he isn't sure why. Laventon gets the attention of one person, having her take Oshawott from Ash. Addressing her as Picel, he then puts a hand on his shoulder before welcoming him to the Galaxy Expedition Team. That name also sounds very familiar to him. Similar to a name he hadn't heard in a while. Team Galactic. He notices that the insignia on the sleeves of members look very familiar, very similar to Team Galactic as well. That's just a coincidence, though. Right? Someone steps out of a room that stands right in front of them. Their cold gaze makes Ash do a double take, both him and Pikachu getting on guard, as their visage looks similar to that of a past evil. Laventon seems to notice this, and clearing his throat, he tries to introduce the two, calling the new person by the name of Captain Silene. Silene coldly looks Ash up and down, before asking if this is supposed to be a new recruit. Before Laventon can explain, Ash introduces himself as Ash Ketchum of Pallet Town. He tries to be polite about it, but Silene doesn't seem to care. Instead, she mentions how someone as young as him isn't ready for the field. It's at this point Laventon mentions how Ash had a lot of potential, telling Silene about how Ash was able to easily catch Pokemon that he had with him. He even showed himself to be good at commanding Pokemon in combat. Silene seems slightly intrigued by this, though she makes it difficult for Ash to tell. She asks Laventon where she found this boy, to which Laventon explains that he saw Ash come from the sky. Ash is still unsure about that, as he can't remember falling or anything. One moment, he and Pikachu were about to go to sleep back home. The next moment, the two of them were on the beach. He vaguely remembers a bright light and voice, but that might have just been a dream. Silene seems skeptical of this, but despite the strangeness, there isn't anything that gives her reason to believe otherwise. So she suggests a simple deal. Should their commander permit this, Ash may stay there and they'll work to find out what brought him here. But he'll have to work in order to repay them. Ash agrees to this, so Silene walks them upstairs to the office of Commander Komodo. The man they call their commander turns to greet them. His hair and mustache remind Ash of someone he'd met before. However, the presence he has feels very different. Ash can't quite explain it, but he gets the feeling that this man has been through a lot. He introduces himself as Komodo, commander of the Galaxy Expedition Team, and Silene quickly briefs him on the situation. The man, of course, finds this idea to be impossible, even with Laventon being an eyewitness. He sternly asks the professor why he would bring this outsider in then, if he truly came from the unknown. Laventon gets ready to explain himself, but then he pauses, leaving Ash to mention that they needed to treat an injured Oshawott. Komodo looks at Ash sternly, before looking at Pikachu. The commander asks why he would allow that creature to be on his shoulder, to which Ash of course simply states that he and Pikachu are buddies. The two of them do everything together. Komodo slowly nods. With a few moments of thought, he decides what they'll do. If Ash truly wants them to trust him, let alone use their housing and resources to help him, then he must pass a few trials. Much to their surprise, Ash instantly accepts to take on these challenges, stating that he's faced plenty of trials before, so he's not scared to do so again. This seems to strike a chord with Komodo. So, the Galaxy Team commander takes a widened stance, before exclaiming that the first trial will be to face him in combat, one-on-one. At first, Ash thinks he means a Pokemon battle, but the opposite becomes quickly apparent, as Silene states that Komodo isn't one for wielding Pokemon, but rather physical combat. This puts Ash off a bit, but he doesn't have much of a choice. So with Pikachu leaping from his shoulder, Ash rushes towards the commander. Once he's close, Ash grabs Komodo in an attempt to lift him. At first, Commander Komodo chuckles, thinking Ash's attempts are futile. But then he can feel himself being lifted slightly. Now getting more serious, Komodo uses his weight against Ash, forcing the boy off of him. Then, when Ash tries to rush him again, Komodo grabs him by the arm, pivots away, and uses his other arm to force Ash off his feet. Ash crashes against the desk, unsure of what just happened. The commander chuckles, admitting that Ash has strength and vigor, though his sumo skills are lacking. Even a slightly more experienced warrior should have seen his Hikake coming. Silene does mention that maybe having a 10-year-old take on a fully grown man in his prime was a little dishonest. Komodo does have to agree with Silene there, so he states the next trial will be something that the young man seems to be good at. The group heads downstairs, meeting with an Abra that was in Silene's office. Before they go, Ash asks if he can quickly check on Oshawott. While Silene and Komodo both seem uncertain as to why he'd want to do that, they still allow this, directing him to the medical ward. Within the medical ward, Ash finds Oshawott on a stretcher, while the woman from before tends to it. When he notices her, the woman seems pleasantly surprised to be seeing someone checking on the well-being of a Pokemon. Ash asks why he wouldn't want to see if Oshawott was okay. To which he has to learn that not every member of the Galaxy team are so kind. Many members of the Survey and Security Corps will bring the Pokemon they use in combat here, and then leave without a second thought. Ash looks at Oshawott, seeing the sea otter is getting better, while resting peacefully there. Then he says that he can't understand why anyone would act the way those people do. Pokemon and people are supposed to be friends. Before anything else can be said, though, Ash's visitation is brought to a quick close, as in an instant, the others show up via Abra's teleport. A moment later, they're gone. What they don't get to see, however, is Oshawott beginning to stir. Within seconds, the group is in a large fieldland. There they find a girl crouched over in the tall grass, seemingly hiding from something. Kamado only needs to clear his throat in order to get her attention. She turns, and Ash is floored. He blurts out the name of his friend Dawn in bewilderment, only for her to look confused. Silene then introduces her as Akari, a member of the Survey Corps, and currently Laventon's main research assistant. Laventon jumps in, mentioning how she's been a great help in working on the Pokedex. Ash asks what he means, to which Akari shows off a book she has. The book is filled with all sorts of Pokemon drawings and notes. Laventon exclaims that this is his pride and joy, a full encyclopedia of the Pokemon found within the Hisui region. Hisui. So that's what this place was called. Kamado changes the subject, asking how the Pokemon Akari has been asked to watch is faring. The girl gestures over to a nearby rock, stating that the Rapidash was currently behind it. Upon closer look, Ash can barely make out the shape of a horn behind the rock. Kamado then orders Akari to get its attention. The girl is immediately against this idea, stating that they wouldn't be able to do anything should this Rapidash go on a rampage. However, Kamado will not change his mind. So Akari picks up a rock and throws it as hard as she can towards the boulder. The rock strikes nearby the Rapidash horn, causing the horn to move. It's at that moment Ash learns what Akari was so cautious of. The Rapidash towers over the boulder. Its eyes have a strange red glow about them. Upon seeing the group, the Fire Horse begins to charge in a fit of berserk rage. Kamado then tells Ash to capture this beast as his second trial. Laventon and Akari both state their objections to this, with Laventon exclaiming that this idea was completely absurd. He might even get Ash killed. However, Ash and Pikachu step up and get ready to take on Rapidash. Much to everyone's surprise, he doesn't seem scared at all. He takes a few Pokeballs from Laventon, and then it's time for his second trial. As Rapidash gets closer, Ash calls for an Electro web. Pikachu fires off the attack, the web wrapping around Rapidash's snout. The Fire Horse Pokemon lets out a strained whinny, reeling back slightly. Pikachu then follows up with a quick attack, which hits the towering horse hard. Rapidash stammers back, before it engulfs itself in flames. It rushes in, so Ash calls for Pikachu to dodge this Flare Blitz attack. Pikachu barely avoids it, only for Rapidash to continue heading straight towards the group. In an instant, the group teleports a safe distance away, leaving Ash and Pikachu as the only ones near Rapidash. At the last second, Ash manages to roll out of the way of the Berserk steed. Ash becomes less certain of trying to catch Rapidash. Why was it so angry? What was with those glowing red eyes? Maybe catching it was a bad idea. Finding a way to calm it down, however, maybe that was possible. Ash gets to his feet, before calling for Pikachu to use Iron Tail on Rapidash's legs. Pikachu acts quickly, managing to knock the horse to its knees. Ash then runs over and leaps up onto its back. Despite the size, Ash manages to get onto the back of Rapidash, but this only throws it into a panic. The fire horse begins to thrash about, attempting to buck Ash off. He doesn't give up though. He keeps hold, no matter the flames are thrashing. The entire time, he just focuses on trying to calm Rapidash down. It takes a while, but Ash perseveres, and eventually, it works. Much to the astonishment of the group, Rapidash stops thrashing, and allows Ash to guide it over to the rest of the group. There, Rapidash lets Ash off, before trotting away. Akari asks how Ash even did that, but he doesn't know. Ash shrugs, nonchalantly stating that he's been able to do things like that for a while now. In fact, he had done it with a Pokemon like it during a race, way back when. With this revelation, Silene states that this was a clear pass of the trial. Komodo stammers a little, as if trying to argue against this, but he ultimately has to admit to the skill that Ash has. With that, the group leaves. Once back in Jubilife Village, Ash is given his final trial. He will be facing the head of the Security Corps in a duel. They give him time to prepare, and the word ends up spreading quickly. By the time Ash is ready for his duel, the entire village is there to witness this fight at the training grounds. His opponent is introduced as Hisui, and upon first look, Ash can tell that she's pretty strong. Others murmur about her capabilities, how she is one of the few who can actually command a Pokemon in combat with ease. Some say she's taken on a rampaging Luxray in combat, and won single-handedly. Of course, Hisui barely pays attention to what people say about her, instead giving Ash her best wishes, and hoping that the two of them can have an excellent duel. So with that, they are called to begin. Just as Ash is about to bring out Pikachu, things are interrupted by the woman from the medical ward calling out for Oshawott to stop. Cutting through the crowd, the Sea Otter Pokemon runs his way over to Ash. When Komodo asks what the meaning of this is, Pacell apologizes, saying that Oshawott just ran over here after some Security Corps members were talking about the match. She's not sure why Oshawott wanted to come over, though. Ash crouches down in front of Oshawott, asking him what he rushed over here for. No one else is able to understand what Oshawott is saying, but Ash seems to. Ash smiles, before stating that he'll be using Oshawott in battle. Murmurs fill the large crowd, and even Hisui asks if Ash is thinking this is some sort of game. But Ash simply states that Oshawott wants to fight by his side, so he's going to let him. This only gets more murmurs in the crowd. Ultimately, the decision is allowed. Zisu's partner for the duel is Monferno, one whose fiery spirit is immediately put on display. The two Pokemon clash constantly, with Monferno showing itself to be highly skilled in different moves. Mach Punch, Aerial Ace, and Flamethrower are each utilized against Oshawott. The Sea Otter listens to every one of Ash's commands, and is able to fight well against the Burning Simian. Tackle and Aqua Jet are able to do enough damage against Monferno. However, when things start getting more challenging for Hisui, she breaks out a secret weapon, Thunder Punch. The blow strikes true against Oshawott, forcing the Sea Otter back. Ash asks Oshawott if he can keep battling, and the Otter nods, getting back into the fight. Hisui smiles, getting even more excited by this. She calls for Monferno to rush in with Mach Punch, but Ash throws everyone off. Telling Oshawott to spin on his back while using Aqua Jet, Ash has his Pokemon form a Water Tornado. This shield of sorts not only blocks the attack, but also does damage against Monferno. Monferno staggers back, giving Oshawott the opportunity to leap from the counter shield and tackle it to the ground. With that, the battle is called, Ash being declared the victor. Ash and Pikachu both congratulate Oshawott, who simply stands proudly, reveling in his own power, as well as the outcome of the fight. Everyone else watching is stunned to see Hisui be defeated like this. Hisui takes the loss in stride though, but it's still a shock to everyone. One person in particular seems intrigued by the capabilities of this newcomer. While this man didn't see much of the battle, he was able to see the end, and was filled in on what was happening. His much more grizzled-looking compatriot simply states that this just means they might have a new customer on their hands. But the man isn't even thinking about work. Rather, he and Ash lock eyes, and the man begins to wonder whether Ash is an ally or a threat. And that's where we'll be leaving things for right now. So what do you guys think? Why do you think Ash is in the Hisui region? Do you believe these trials are enough to win over the trust of the village, even the very stern Kamado? And what do you think this blonde-haired stranger will decide to do about Ash? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!